So I'm very, very pleased to introduce Sarah Hendricks and Ed Derman. Sharon Hendricks, I said Sarah, I apologize. Sharon is vice chair of the STRS Board of Directors, which is pretty impressive. She was elected to that position and is an elected position in 2012. She is also chair of the Investments Committee for the State Teachers Retirement System. So a pretty important person we have in our midst.
I'm getting gray hair.
Sharon is also president of the AFT Local 1521, which is the LA City College AFT Local. And so she's president up there, and she does events like this all over the place and is a strong advocate of faculty, adjunct faculty, and certainly a strong proponent of the STRS retirement program. And realistically, about the only person on the board who has any real knowledge, I think, of adjunct concerns and issues in STRS. Ed Derman is the Deputy Chief Executive Officer for Plan Design and Communications, that's a mouthful, of California State Teachers Retirement System. So he's a real pro. He's been doing that since 1998. And if I got this right, Ed, for 12 years prior to that, my information tells me that you were on the State Senate Committee for Appropriations. So Ed's a real expert and a real pro. Yeah, knows how to get money.
Yeah.
Here's Sharon.
Great. It's actually really fun for me to be here. I teach at LA City College. I teach in the Communication Studies Department as a full-time faculty member. But my nephew, so any of you, how many of you teach at Palomar? Can you raise your hands? Okay. So my nephew, his name is Nicholas Hendricks. He's a freshman. This is his first year of college. And he was on the water polo team that did very well. If you follow the water polo at Palomar, I guess they went to like division, or I don't know what you call that, but they got like medals around them. And so he loves classes at Palomar. He's loving community college. So for me, it's kind of like family coming down here, because my brother and sister-in-law and their three kids live near Carlsbad. So I love, it's an honor to be here at Palomar, and I love San Diego. So it's great to have you, and I know there's folks from other campuses down here, but I just, personally think we have the best job in the world. I think teaching is an amazing thing, and seeing my nephew be energized by learning is really exciting. And so thank you for stewarding him and the students here at Palomar and other campuses down here in San Diego. I did want to mention I am a union leader as well, and I do think that one of the toughest issues I have faced as a union leader, as well as a trustee at CalSTRS, is how challenging it is for part-timers and part-timers in the community college system to think about retirement, to understand your retirement, to plan for retirement. It's almost like you have to have a crystal ball and know what you're going to do for the next 30 years. And none of us know what we're going to do. My life has taken lots of turns in the last few years. So I really feel passionately about doing all I can to get around California and speak to part-time community college faculty. Because community college faculty are very small. A lot of people don't know we're a really small part of the system in CalSTRS. So there's only about 7% out of the, it's about 92, 93% K through 12, and then there's 7% community college. And of that 7%, about 5% are part-time community college faculty. So we're a minority in general with community college faculty. And then obviously with part-timers, there's special issues that you guys face. And we're going to talk about that tonight. But Ed and I do this a lot, and we really do want this to be a conversation. We're faculty, we teach, and teaching isn't talking at people. So we really want to take your questions as they come up. So I was at a thing recently where someone said, just write down your questions and leave them until the end, and I was like, I can't do that. So tonight, we really want it to be interactive. So feel free, don't feel like you're interrupting us, we won't take it personal. If you have a question or concern, raise your hands and let's talk about it. Because we really want this to be, we don't want it to be a lecture, we want this to be a tool for you to put in your toolkit to be thinking about how to plan for retirement for yourself. And my hope is that you're going to go back to your campuses and talk to other part-timers, hopefully, and share this information with them. So that's kind of the tone that we want to set for tonight, is to make it as interactive as possible so that we're really helping you solve problems that you're having or questions that are burning in your brain around retirement. One caveat that I will mention, and I beg the indulgence of the leadership that invited me here today, is I am elected to the CalSTRS board, so there's 12 people on the board. 3 of them are elected from educators, 2 are K through 12, and I'm the only person on the board that represents community college faculty in California. So I have to be strong, loud, bossy, and a strong advocate for us, since we are kind of a small part of that system. And I was elected 3 years ago, and I can't believe it, but I'm already up for re-election. There's an election this fall. You'll be getting ballots if you're a CalSTRS member. I know not every part-timer is in CalSTRS, but if you are in the CalSTRS system, you'll get a ballot this fall. But I need to get petitions signed to qualify for the ballot. And the locals here in San Diego have already endorsed me. This is an AFT campus, I know, Palomar. An AFT, both at the local level in California and the national level, the American Federation of Teachers, has endorsed me. So if that helps you in terms of signing the petition. But I'd really appreciate if you'd be willing to sign tonight. I think folks are going to be sending around the petition. You just have to put your first and last name. The last 4 of your social, I promise, the last 4, nobody can do anything with it, and I promise to be a good steward of this information. Your birth month and date. And again, you have to be a CalSTRS member, so you have to be in CalSTRS defined benefit or the cash balance plan. So if you're in Social Security or PARS or Apple or Elephant or all those other plans that we, then you are not able to sign it. But I'd really appreciate your support if you'd be willing to sign it. It just gets my name on the ballot at this point, so thank you for that. All right, so let's jump in, Ed. All right, so I wanted to talk a little bit about retirement options. I just kind of mentioned that. And we tried to look in San Diego and see what the options are, but it's really important that adjuncts know that the CalSTRS defined benefit plan is available for all adjuncts. Did you guys know that? Yeah. Okay, so that's an option for everyone. And a lot of times, what I hear are the horror stories of people get hired, and if you got hired like I got hired, I was an adjunct for when I first got hired, and how I got hired was, hi Sharon, we think you're great, here's your textbook, go with God and have a good time. That's how I was hired. I wasn't given a syllabus, I wasn't given a key to the copy room, I wasn't told where to go, I had no orientation. LA, I hope San Diego's different, but LA, we don't do a very good job orienting our faculty, especially part-time faculty. So you're kind of on your own. I figured it out. But, you know, and then you get that stack of papers, right? And you have to kind of go, okay, this is your retirement and all that stuff. And you're just kind of thinking about your students and teaching. You're not thinking about retirement. So one of the hopes of this is to help you, but also the folks that we're going to hire in the future to make better choices when they start teaching, so that they know what their options are. So CalSTRS defined benefit, and then alternate plans depend on the district. So I don't know exactly, but I think you researched in San Diego, right?
Right. So Palomar has Apple. Miracles that we know has cash balance. Other ones have one called Pear. Other ones, literally, I mean, I guess I got the entire fruit stand here. And then others have AIG or you know. So you really need to know what it is. In some districts, not in San Diego, that I can see, some districts offer Social Security as an option. But in any case, you can always elect the defined benefit program, and it's really, you need to make a decision about whether or not that's the best one for you, because of vesting requirements, it has higher contribution rates, all of that, but you always have that choice, even if you were first elected or placed in to some alternative plan.
And that's something, again, that I know for me, I like to know that I have choices in my life. What are my options? And so I think it's important that you know in your district what your options are and that you make the choice that's right for you. But at this point, if you did want to choose into the DB, you could do that. And so I just want to make sure adjuncts know that that is an option. It does cost you to do that, but that's an option. So, question. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, we might as well start off
Go
with
for
a
it.
question. I
Absolutely.
never was told to join it. I was given an option when I was substitute teaching. I said, no, I'll wait till I get hired full-time, which never happened.
Yeah.
So now, I mean, can I roll over these Apple benefits? I've worked at like some 5 different places.
So you're at Apple right now?
Saddleback.
Mhm.
I don't know what, I think Saddleback just takes off Social Security. So what, can I roll over what's been gone into the funds?
Yes. Yeah, so you can get service credit if you join the defined benefit program. You can buy the service credit that you would have accrued if from those alternative plans, even Social Security. You can take the money that's in those other accounts, other than Social Security, because Social Security quite honestly is not a retirement plan, it's something different. But you can take an Apple or from PARS or from cash balance, you can take those monies and apply that towards the cost of buying the DB service. You don't have to buy all the service, you can buy any amount that you want to, because quite honestly, it's gonna cost you more, almost certainly, to buy the service than what it is you have in your account. But that is an option you have available.
So who do I contact then?
If you're a DB member, you can call our 800 number, you can go online and get the form, tell them you want to get an estimate of what it would cost to buy the service. We'll have to identify where it is you worked and when, we'll research it with the employer, and then we will get back to you with a bill for that.
They'll tell you exactly.
Meaning defined benefit.
Defined benefit.
They'll tell
right.
you how much it costs for you.
Right. But if you have a sense of how many years equivalent you worked, you can go onto our website and you can get an estimate that way, a rough estimate of how much it would cost you to do it. The cost varies by how old you are. The older you are, the more it costs. So because you're closer to retirement age and we don't have as much time to invest it. So if it's something that you are thinking of doing it, it's better to do it sooner rather than later.
And I'll just, let me grab those questions, but I just want to make a commercial for CalSTRS.com. If you are a CalSTRS member in cash balance or defined benefit, or if you're interested in rolling over into CalSTRS, go to CalSTRS.com, and there are calculators on there that help you look at that and kind of estimate, if you will, how much it might cost for you to roll over into defined benefit. I grab you in the back and then in the front.
Well, when I first joined, I looked and it looked like the defined benefit was the better option. So I went to sign up, and the HR person told me, oh, most associate faculty go with this, which is the cash balance, and she steered me away from the defined benefit, only to discover later that that wasn't the right thing, having so much information. So I think there needs to be, associate faculty joining need to hear that at the beginning from somebody, because we have no idea what's going on, and then you realize. And my question is, though, if I had joined the defined benefit, wouldn't have cost anything at the beginning?
No, it costs something. Let me just make sure. Can everyone hear what the questions are? You guys can hear the questions, because I'll sort of repeat it. But what I would say is, for your first point, I agree. Like I said before, the orientations that faculty get, whether you're full or part-time, honestly, are pretty abysmal. And I know our union, and I certainly hope that the unions and faculty associations down here in San Diego would partner better with our districts, because our districts really need help in educating them on how to communicate to folks. Because I've heard your story a million times, and it breaks my heart all the time, every time I hear it, because a lot of times people, you really shouldn't, I shouldn't, and I won't tonight. I'm not going to recommend to you what you should do. You guys have to decide for yourself. You need to know what your options are, and then talk to your financial advisor, go to CalSTRS, get information, and then you have to talk to your loved ones and figure out what's best for you. So for some people, cash balance is better for them, given what they're thinking about in life, or their financial situation, or what their spouse does. But for other people, defined benefit is better. It's a heftier retirement benefit for them. So I wouldn't say one's better than the other. I think there are financial advantages to each one, and I think that's the challenge is faculty need to be educated about what the reality is of each of their options, and they shouldn't be told what to pick. Right?
But would you be paying when you first start and you go straight into defined balance?
Defined
benefit. Would you be paying extra or?
Right. So I'm a defined benefit as a full timer, and I pay 8% of my paycheck. Well, actually now I pay 8 and 8.15, and we'll talk about the funding and the change in contribution rate. So I pay 8.15% a month out of my paycheck into the CalSTRS defined benefit program. In the cash balance program, it's now 4%. So cash balance. So that's why a lot of part-time faculty choose that, is it's more money in your pocket every month. But again, that's where I think you have to go, okay, there's a short-term cost and a long-term. And again, for your life, if you're saving for a house or a car or something like that, then maybe that extra cash in your pocket for you right now is what you need. Some people would say, that long-term, I always joke about the two sexiest words in American English are compounded interest. Put that money in and hang out for 30 years, and it's a beautiful thing at the end of the day. So, but again, I think that's your personal choice, and nobody can tell you what to do with your money. My personal philosophy. Does that help? Okay.
When I looked at my paycheck, it looked like around that 8-9% is taken out for the retirement plan.
Uh-huh.
Then when I looked at my benefit statement, it was like a 2/3, 1/3 split between defined benefit and cash balance. Do I have the right though to go all defined benefit if I
Yes.
want?
Yeah.
I mean, are you working for two different colleges or are you in one?
No, just one
Did you used to be in cash balance?
No, I don't know what I used to be.
Oh, okay. Well, if it's showing that you have,
I'm saying what it
if it's
is.
showing that you have an account in cash balance, then you may have at one time been a cash balance participant and didn't know it. And at the later point, you elected to join DB. You have the right as a DB member to take those monies in cash balance and use those to buy the DB service credit for that period of time, just like we talked about earlier. And then it's called consolidation of the benefit.
But I will say, can I just comment on that, and then I'll grab you, because I know you look like you have a follow-up question. One of the things I hope that you get out from tonight is you should know what retirement plan you're in. And when Ed and I come and speak, I am astonished that more than half of the room doesn't know what retirement plan they're in. We had somebody that said, what does CalSTRS stand for? You know, things like that. And that's okay. That's why we do these workshops, so that people know what CalSTRS is, what a pension is, what retirement is. But I think, again, that's hopefully why you're here, is you want to get educated on what a retirement system is, what CalSTRS stands for. And so I think it'd be important for you to know, where did that cash balance come from? When did that happen? And then, are you sure that you're in defined benefit now? Because a lot of times we just kind of, it's like going to dentist. You go once in a while and then you don't look at it for a while. It's important that you know what plan you're in, because over time, obviously, it's going to have an impact on your retirement. Did you have a follow-up question?
Well, I think, I'm in the same boat he is. I have both the defined benefit and a whatever,
The cash balance?
cash balance, so, and that's been that way since I started. And I don't remember making a choice.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I'm wondering, are you seeing cash balance or are you seeing defined benefit supplement?
Maybe it's that.
That's what it is. Okay, don't worry about it. You're fine. Okay, I'm not sure.
I'm like a duck for something.
Okay.
So there's defined benefit. You can keep talking.
Yeah, okay, so there's three pieces to the CalSTRS. We're a hybrid system, there's three pieces to it. The one that everyone's most familiar with, hopefully, is the defined benefit program, and that's the one that you're paying, for your contract. You get a benefit based on how old you are when you retire, how many years of service credit you got, and what your final average salary was, your highest average salary was. If you're in the defined benefit program, you also are participating in what's called the defined benefit supplement program. It is a cash balance program, very similar to the cash balance that is designed for adjunct faculty, but this is for people who are in DB. There's two places where that money comes from. One was that for the 10 years ending in 2010, about a quarter of what you contributed to CalSTRS went into your DBS account. Then, beginning in 2002, if you're an adjunct faculty member and working really hard at a lot of different colleges and earn more than a year of service credit, then everything above and beyond that year, the contributions that you paid and that your employer paid, also go in your DBS account. That's probably what you're seeing, okay? There's nothing, it's designed to do that. There's nothing you need to do. When you retire, you'll not only get your benefit from DB, you'll also be able to you'll also get your DBS benefit. Either as a lump sum, you can roll it over to an IRA, or 401k or any other plan that you want to, or you can take an annuity. So cash balance is identical to DBS except for who's in it and the contribution rates that go into it.
So, and I guess, again, just to reiterate, so again, your homework assignment tonight, you can go home, go on CalSTRS.com, and if you sign up for My CalSTRS, it allows you, have you guys done that? I see some nodding. So some of you have done that, right? So you download, I think, because you were at a different workshop with me, right? Were you in Glendale? So you can download your annual retirement statement. In fact, now at CalSTRS, our board voted to only give it to you electronically, and you have to opt into a paper option because it's less expensive and you want us to invest your money, right, instead of using paper. So you can look at that annual statement, and you should look at that annual statement tonight and take a look at it. And actually now, CalSTRS allows you as part-time community college faculty to click on tabs so you can look at each of the districts that you work for and look at your service credit. So you should be making sure that looks accurate, but you should also know where your money is, where it's DB, DBS, or the CV. Yeah, question?
On the website, I was not able to find my total service credit. Report, no. Does it say that anymore?
It's under the progress report.
On my calendar.
It's under My CalSTRS in your annual report. You should have your total service credit.
You have to download the PDF of it.
It's on the,
Okay, thank you.
yeah, but if you do need help, we can talk afterwards.
Thank you.
We got internet right here, so we can do it. Yep.
When we do retire, how long do we, I have questions, how long do we have to wait before we can re-enter as a teacher again to teach as a retiree? And the other question is, will we be paying back into STRS once again, once we're a retiree working?
Good question.
Okay, so the first question is after you retire, you can come back to work right away, but this is sort of but for the first 180 days, there is what's called a zero limit. So anything you earn, if you don't come back to work right away, you might lose seniority rights, so you can do it. But you're basically effectively working for free, I guess.
That's the one caveat I'd give to this audience, is as a part-time, I know in LA, we passed an MOU so that part-time faculty who do retire are not affected by seniority by waiting out that one semester. So that might be something that the associations and unions might want to discuss here in San Diego. But you're basically working for free, if you will. You're getting a paycheck, but you're not getting your CalSTRS pension for that 6 months, or it's held back dollar for dollar for whatever you
So
earn.
after 180 days,
After 180 days, and there's also an annual limit of a little over $40,000. So
which should be a
again,
problem.
I was just gonna say, a lot of part-timers go.
and also just so you know, during the 180 days, now this may or may not apply to anybody. It may not really matter. It only applies for people who are coming back to work in service that's covered by CalSTRS. So if there's an adjunct K-12, but if you teach at a different college that's outside of CalSTRS, there's no limit.
Or a private school.
Or a private school, or
But if I wanted to come back here, it would behoove me to wait 180 days,
yeah.
come back, get a job, and
Assuming-
then I have to just really, really not make $40,000.
Yes, and we will send you a warning letter when you start approaching $40,000.
They do actually give you a heads up.
Yeah, so we do give you a heads up.
It's actually nice.
Yeah, and then as far as your other questions concerned, being a retired member, you will not pay contributions to CalSTRS during that subsequent service.
So then what would you, nothing, you don't pay?
You pay nothing to us.
To retirement at all? Do I
No.
have to join Apple at that
No,
time?
no, because you're retired. You are retired.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
How do you calculate the service credit years?
Ah, yes, the favorite adjunct question. Okay, so the question is, how do you calculate service credit? Very important. There's this, and this is another one of the huge takeaways, and not only because I'm going to talk about service credit, but also final compensation, because this is one of those aha moments that the adjuncts always get. Service credit is calculated. What's important to know is how much money would I make if I worked in that job on a full-time basis? Not as a full-time faculty person, because they may have a different salary rate, but at that salary rate, if I worked the number of hours of instructional time that I would have worked if I worked full-time. So let's say, for example, somebody in a college, that the full-time person would work 600 hours on a full-time basis. They would teach 600 hours, not work, not office hours necessarily, or prep time. They would actually teach 600 hours. And let's say that your hourly rate is, give me a good hourly rate. What's a reasonable hourly rate? $60?
We'll round it off.
$60. It's easier math. So what is called the sort of the annual salary rate, or what we call the compensation earnable, is $36,000. What we do then is we know how much money you actually made. If you made $18,000, we divide the $18,000 by the $36,000, and you get half a year of service credit. That assumes that the employer correctly reports to us what a full-time person would actually teach. And this is a challenge that we have had with respect to a number of colleges for a number of years. Because there's a minimum standard of 500, assumed of a minimum of 525 hours is what the least amount that they can report to us. But it's got to be based on what they really require. LA, for example, is 600 hours. It actually should be different for different disciplines. English might be one number, math might be another number, lab will be a third number, all that. And we've had challenges with that, and we continue to work with that. But the way it's supposed to work is if this is what a full-time person would teach, that's your hourly rate, that's what you would do it, that's what you actually made, you get half a year of service credit. Now, here's the other thing, I know this wasn't your question, but I really want to make sure people understand that. When we talk about final compensation, it's not how much money you made in your highest 3 consecutive years, it's how much money you would make if you had done that on a full-time basis. It's not the $18,000, it's the $36,000 that is the basis of your final compensation. Okay, that's a lot of things that faculty don't realize that it makes a huge difference in what their benefit's going to be when they go online and try to estimate the benefit. A lot of times the adjunct will plug in this number because that's the number they make. It's actually that number that's what's important. Okay?
Can I make a comment on
Yeah.
that? A couple comments and then I'll grab you in the back again. I was laughing when Ed was talking about relying on district data. And so I just want to mention again that one of the challenges I face all the time is that the district gives incorrect information. I know that's hard to believe, it probably doesn't happen down here. But in LA, it happens all the time where our district sends incorrect data to CalSTRS. And CalSTRS and Ed's office, they all rely on the district. They don't ask you what you earned or your service credit. They ask the district for the data. And so one of the things, we have a part-time task force we put together before I came on the board, and I serve on that committee now. We're really trying to hone in on this particular issue, which is making sure, depending on which district that you're in, that you're getting the right service credit for. So in LA, we just wrote last year an MOU, which is now in our new contract, that basically does parse it out per department. Because like in PE, it's 21 units, and in English, it's 12, and my department, speech communication, is 15. So we actually now in our contract have that specified out so that, and that contract goes to CalSTRS, and so they see how we calculate the earnable for our part-time faculty.
And actually, this is one of the things where you can be of great help. When you look at your retirement progress report that every year you can go online to get, if this number should be pretty close to, I'm not sure what term you might use, but we always think of it in terms of load. If you got a 50% of a full load, and this number is like, the number you're getting from us is way different from that, then probably the district's not doing it right. It might be slightly different because, for example, paid office hours will count as service credit, and there might be other things as well. But if this is way off, then you need to go talk to your HR folks and try to get that straightened out. If you have if you work in multiple districts, and so you're just getting a single number from us, one of the things that Sharon mentioned on my CalSTRS is that you can go online and look to see how much got reported by each district. So if something's like not looking right, and you're at Palomar, and you're at Southwestern, and you're at Miracosta, you can go back and look at each one and see, well, it's Miracosta that's way off, so I got to go talk to Miracosta. That's someplace that only you're in a position of judging the accuracy of it. We can't tell about it just by looking at the numbers.
Let me grab you in the back, and then you, and then.
So just to reiterate,
Yeah.
so if we work here at Palomar and also, let's say, Miracosta, the number, let's say I get 0.5 here at Palomar and then 0.5 at Miracosta, so that becomes one service year.
Correct.
1 year.
And then if you work at
Right.
another college, everything you earn above that, the contributions that you are making and your employer is making go to the DBS program. And it's whichever one is the lowest paying job is what one goes to DBS so that we maximize your final compensation.
So I know, like in our district, you can't work over 0.67, but I assume those two schools are in different districts.
Right.
I'm gonna grab you.
more than one service credit a year.
You
Correct.
can't earn over a 1 year of service credit. So as a full-timer, when I teach winter, summer, hourly on top of the regular load, which I don't do, but I have issues with that, obviously. But when people do that for a full-timer, that goes into the DBS account, too, same kind of idea. Yep.
Okay, is there any recourse for those of us that, don't want to be polite here. I was first told you can't belong to retirement at all because you're a part-timer. Then when they finally, signed us up, they took our load, so instead of dividing by 15-hour full unit, full load, they used, oh, well, you're a part-timer, we'll use a 40-hour work week, which meant 2,080 was used instead of 600. Is there any recourse on getting those credits back?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can,
Yeah,
you should go back to you still remember that employer? Or are you no longer with that employer?
No, I'm still there, so
Okay,
don't give me
you need to go
questions.
back, they can always re-report it, and employers re-report compensation all the time, and often dating back many years.
Because I was told it took a lawsuit for them to change, because they claimed, well, you didn't tell us how to calculate it, and my union is telling me there's no recourse.
No, there's always a recourse, I mean, the standard, it changed in 1996 in terms of the basis upon which the service credit is determined.
This was before then.
So then the minimum standard was 1,050. So it's possible that at that time, I honestly don't know, it was before my time at CalSTRS. It may have been a different system, so I don't know. But as a general rule, just because that's the way they reported it, doesn't mean it has to stay that way, if it's not
Okay,
correct.
then the second question, when you say the last 3 consecutive years highest, is it the last ones or 83
No, and
highest?
the three highest consecutive years,
Okay,
other than in the circumstance in which there was a reduction in state funding, then, like, for example, presumably, let's say 2012-13, when the state cut funding, if they cut your salaries, then you can skip that year and pick 3 non-consecutive years.
right, but it doesn't have to be the last.
No, it's the highest
That's
3.
kind of a myth out there. I always love myth busting, like the whole thing, like you can't work for 7 or 8 days. You can't. It's not the last 3 years. It's
Thank you.
And also just,
36 months.
it's 36 months.
36 months, if I may
Actually.
correct you.
Yes, that's a good point. And if you're picking it, and if you're doing it the standard consecutive way, other than the one I just referred to, the non-consecutive one, if it's consecutive, assuming it was sometime in the last 15 years of your career from us, you don't have to tell us which years to use. We know which ones they are. Our computer actually goes back and looks at all of your earnings history and determines which ones are the right ones to use, and we do that. So you don't need to worry about, oh, well, I can't remember if it was 2008, 9, or whatever it was. We got it, so don't worry about that.
I will just say with that though, I'm inordinate about my money. I keep everything. I have pay stubs from the 80s. And so I do trust CalSTRS. I don't trust my district, but at the end of the day, I always tell people, at the end of the day, this is your money, these are your benefits, and you need to make sure you understand them and are responsible for them. And so if I were you, I'd go back and fight that. I always think there's recourse. So I had you, and then back there.
So to go out and do a different tangent,
Sure.
what's the relationship between CalSTRS and Social Security?
A frustrating one? I don't know. I can speak to, I'll share from my experience, because I'm frustrated right now about it, so I'm gonna, the challenge with CalSTRS and Social Security, I think you're referring to the WEP and the GPO, the offsets that some people are subject to when they
But when
retire.
you get something, what is that
Right, okay.
ceiling or that?
Right. So CalSTRS, when you become a community college faculty member or a K-12 teacher in California, your retirement system is CalSTRS. And I guess the part-timers elected to CalSTRS. And you don't pay into Social Security. And there's 14 states that are like that, where teachers in their states don't pay into Social Security. Whereas your classified are in CalPERS, you've heard of CalPERS,
Yes.
and they do pay into Social Security and pay into their pension. So it's a different model. For CalSTRS, we don't. I don't know exactly why that is, but it is what it is. You can explain that.
Sure.
But what I will tell you is nobody explained to me that first day when I signed that I'm going to be employed by the LA Community College District, that all of a sudden my Social Security earnings, I'd worked in the private sector, which I'm assuming a lot of you did,
Yes.
for 13 years, and I earned some credits in Social Security. Nobody told me that once I started working in the districts and was in CalSTRS, that my Social Security would be subject to offsets. And that's what happens, basically. So when you retire, depending on how long you worked in Social Security, if you have 30 years in Social Security, you're fine. But not a lot of people,
20 years.
30 years, 30 years.
30 years,
Trust me,
and they
it's 30.
actually have
I've been
something.
researching this for my own life. And,
And it's a substantial amount they've got to charge.
right, and we won't, spend a ton of time on it, but at ssa.gov, if you go to the Social Security website, you can take a look and see what is considered substantial earnings for your kind of earning history and see how much potentially you might be subject to those offsets. That was, and I will tell you, everyone asks me, I get a lot of folks asking me, when are they going to repeal those offsets? And at this point, they just keep saying it's too expensive to change it at the federal level, and there's not a lot of will to change that right now, and so probably not in my lifetime. But anyway, if you want to.
Yeah, just a couple of other points. First of all, it's after 20 years of substantial earnings, that the impact of the offset starts to go down.
Yeah.
And it's eliminated entirely after 30 years.
We're talking eliminated.
Right.
Yeah, the other thing that's very important to know is that even if you're in Apple or in PARS or any of the other alternative plans, you are also subject to the offsets. It's not because you're in CalSTRS, it's because you're in a retirement plan that is not covered by Social Security. So being in a different alternative plan isn't going to avoid the offset. The other point is, well, actually a couple points. One was because it was one of the questions that Scott had mentioned this before. People said, what if I take a refund instead of taking a monthly benefit? Do I avoid the offset? If once you are eligible to retire, which in our case is you've got 5 years of service and you're 55 years old, then even if you take a refund, you're still going to be subject to the offset. They will calculate what the value of that amount of money you took back is, and they will use that as a basis to reduce your Social Security benefit. But the other thing is, it's a pain. It's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate that the statement that you can get from Social Security every year doesn't acknowledges the offset, but doesn't tell you what the benefit will be. But the benefit, the reduction in the benefit, can't be any more than half of what you're getting from us. That's one rule. The other thing is that depending upon how much money you're making, I mean, so that's the first thing, and there's a maximum amount of the impact of the web. So as unfortunate as it is that it takes place, it's important that people don't overreact and make a bad decision like, well, I'm just going to not take my CalSTRS benefit, which could be thousands of dollars per month in some cases, in order to avoid a reduction of about $350 a month. So you can go online and see what your Social Security benefit would be with the offset, and then so you can at least do some better planning. But please, be careful understanding what it does and what it doesn't do.
So can I?
Sure, let me get her and then
Because
we'll
it
get you.
follows on. Yeah.
Sure.
I went to a STRS meeting in the summer, and that's when I joined the forum to be fabulous.
Great, good job.
And it was a full-timer crowd. There was the only part-timer there. And they spoke about disability, where we don't pay into state disability. However, STRS, we pay into STRS disability. We're protected with STRS. Correct me if I'm wrong. So if we become ill or we cannot work, is that true?
Yes, you'll get. Well, yes. If you become disabled,
that.
it's one of the benefits of being in DB. Is it? Well, and actually, Cash Balance has one too, but it's based on your account balance. But if you become disabled as a DB member and you are vested, and if in fact, which is 5 years, but if you are disabled as a result of bodily injury that you get from an unlawful act in the course of your job. So, for example, you get assaulted by a student and you become disabled, which has happened, yes, unfortunately, then you will also get a disability benefit, and it will be at least half of what you were making, an additional amount, depending upon if you have dependent children.
So even if we got in a car accident,
Yes, it doesn't have to be work related.
we would get at half of what we were making.
At least half of what
At
you're
least.
making. At least half, plus 10% for each dependent child, up to a total of 90%.
If you're vested in.
And does that happen immediately? I mean, is it hard? I mean,
Well, it's you have to be. We evaluate the disability. We get medical records,
All right.
and it's got to be a permanent disability, or at least at least 12 months.
Okay.
So it's not like I sprained my ankle, and we will look at things like, can you be reasonably accommodated, and you'll be required to work with your employer to see if there's some way of accommodated disability. So it's not everybody doesn't get it, for sure.
People can read about it. I will
Yeah.
say that if you do another homework assignment, the website actually has a lot of information about disability. So.
CalSTRS?
Yeah,
So
CalSTRS.com.
what if you work at two colleges, would your salary be the combined salary or just?
Yeah, I believe it would be.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me grab you and then the gentleman in the back.
No, I just wanted
Yeah.
to ask about the
Sure.
cash balance account.
Yeah.
Well, there's two things. One
Sure.
would be the offset with Social Security. Is there an offset? Nobody can tell me.
Yes.
For cash balance?
The
For
cash
cash
balance,
balance.
PARS, Apple, you pick, other than Social Security itself, if you're in Social Security as your alternative plan, which I don't think San Diego colleges offer that,
So
then
what-
you wouldn't be.
So what I'm understanding is cash balance was a really bad choice for me.
Well,
Because-
well,
let
in
me
your
say
particular
that.
case, it may not have worked to your advantage, but I mean,
One, you basically, there's essentially no disability. And there is no way of getting disability because I don't work enough to make it. I can't even get an insurance for disability. because I don't work enough hours.
Oh,
So there's a
yeah.
lot of danger that should be told to people at the
Yeah.
beginning that we have no idea about, we discover along the way.
Yeah.
So you're stuck.
The disability benefit under cash balance is basically, is basically your account balance, which you can take as an annuity if you want.
Yeah, it's
if you
not
have
much.
enough money,
It's
but
not-
if you're disabled.
Let me grab you in the back and then.
Yes, you mentioned something just a moment ago about permanent impairment and or disability as a result of a work injury. In California, that's compensable on a permanent impairment and or disability basis. How would that affect your benefits?
If you
If you're
receive,
given a permanent impairment.
if you have a permanent disability that's work-related and you qualify for our disability benefit and workers' comp, then your disability benefit will be offset by your workers' comp benefit. So they
Boy,
coordinate.
bring him with me.
They coordinate.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the disability benefit, is that only if you are working at the
No,
time?
if you are, well, you have to be working within 4 months of, yeah, you have to apply for it within 4 months of your termination of employment.
They would apportion that, wouldn't they? They would apportion a certain amount to the disability and then a certain amount to the retirement?
You mean a certain amount to workers' comp or a certain amount to
Yes,
counselors?
a certain amount.
I
from workers'
honestly
comp.
don't know. I think it may be dollar for dollar, but I don't
Our
want to
specialty
give
is
an
not
answer.
disability, but I.
Yeah, I mean, if you're really interested in it, you can call our contact center and they can get you that.
It's nice to know though, as part-time
Yeah.
teachers, that we're not paying into Social Security, and we do have, you know,
Yes.
a disability if there's an emergency.
Yes, there is. I mean, and it's important to also know you also have a form of life insurance as well. That if you were to, depending upon when you were first hired, if you were to die, you will get a little over $24,000 in a lump sum. And if you were vested, you could get a survivor benefit for your spouse and for your family. So, I mean, it's really important when you're making these decisions. If you're like 20, 30 years away from retirement, there are still benefits that you get from being a counselor.
Make sure you put a beneficiary on your one-time death benefit. I have so many homework assignments.
I know,
Just
really.
like this. But make sure you assign somebody. I'll grab you and then back over here.
Back to the Social Security
Sure.
benefits. I only teach part-time as an adjunct, and I have another job as a part-time as well. So I just had a friend who's an elementary school teacher, retired at this point, say basically there was a maximum you could collect through counselors, but then once that maximum was reached, the rest of it was a one-to-one deduction from Social Security.
No, not from Social Security, from counselors. I mean, I think she's talking about the post-retirement earnings limit, where you can earn a little over $40,000 after you retire in a K-12 community college, and then after that, everything you earn above that, it reduces your counselor's benefit. Social Security also has an earnings limit for people getting Social Security benefits, and I think it's like I think they take $1 for every $2 you earn, but there's no, I think that starts from $1.
Maximum. So
Yeah, if you're under age 67 or 60, when your full retirement age is.
So my Social Security will be reduced at most 50% of whatever I get from counselors.
No, your social, yes. If your salary is, if your benefit from us is less than the maximum reduction under the windfall elimination, which is about $360 a month, then it won't be, then your Social Security benefit will be reduced by half of what you were getting from counselors, assuming that you didn't have 30 years of substantial earnings under Social Security. If you got other jobs that are in Social Security, you are accruing those additional years of potentially substantial earnings.
And even if they're part-time, they're still considered.
Well, if they're substantial, it's a dollar value. It depends on how much money you're making in those other jobs. I mean, actually, let me see the chart. Like this year, I'm sorry, this year, it's $21,000, or last year was $21,000 is what's considered substantial earnings.
Substantial earnings.
So if you make at least $21,000 under Social Security, then that year will count towards the 30 years that you need to avoid as well.
So at this point, the 8%, sorry from that.
That's okay, you're fine, go ahead.
Is not going into a black hole, that I actually will get some of the.
Yes, absolutely. You'll get your full counselor's benefit.
It's not counselors.
It's Social Security
Social
that's
Security
being
impacted.
affected.
Yeah.
You do get some of it, it's just not, that's the part that I'm frustrated by, is you don't get the 100%.
But I'm,
Yes, go ahead.
So I went to Palomar to ask for my evaluation and found out they had me listed as no longer working here when I was still working here. So I am a little worried that the service credits might not be accurate.
Yeah.
Is there a place I can go to get help on figuring out whether it's accurate or not?
Well, I would, I mean,
You're not lying. In a perfect world, I'm sorry, I'm the union leader here. So. No, I guess, I mean, just because I deal with this all the time in LA, the best thing, I think, and I can't speak in San Diego and Palomar, what your union is like here, your faculty associations, but the best thing you can do, I'm friends with all the HR people, payroll people, I know them first name basis at our district, on my campus, because those are the people you want to get to know and be really nice, bring chocolates at Christmas, and because I sit down with them and I say, not only for me, but for my faculty, you know, this isn't right. So I would go to, we have a retirement unit in our district. I don't know if you have a retirement unit or an HR person. But if you don't know, I would talk to your union leader or faculty.
I kind of talked to the union.
If you don't
get
get
better check on that, and I was hoping I could get someone to help me check on that since it's.
That's what you pay your dues for. So, but that's what I would do is talk to HR or the retirement unit, and they can help with the members of our
unit in our HR?
There's somebody in HR that does your retirement reporting to CalSTRS.
Lucy Nelson. Lucy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one other thing, I mean, the first place to definitely look is your employer, because we rely on the employer, so it's really the employer's gonna fix it. If you're having really serious problems where you're getting nowhere, we have an ombudsman at CalSTRS, Tom Barrett, and you can get in touch with him, and he can work with our, what we call member account services, with the people who deal with the employers as well as the employer, to try to get it straightened out, but, you know,
2 hours, 2 Ts?
but it's 2 hours, 2 Ts.
2 Ts,
Yeah.
okay.
But don't go to him first, because
Yeah.
it's him and one other person, and there's probably several thousand adjunct faculty that, you know, spend a full-time job dealing with it. So really, try and work it out with your employer first. But if you really get frustrated, we have an ombudsman that can try and help you.
I've got another hand right next to it. Go ahead.
So I have a question about the myth busting.
Yeah.
I don't know where I read or maybe I just heard that full-time faculty that have overload can accrue more than one service credit per
That's a
calendar
myth.
year.
No,
Bust
you
it right
can't.
now. That's a myth.
No, you'll never get more than your service credit, but you will get a retirement benefit, but it's through DVS.
So right. So my first year, I think I taught like a regular load, and I taught winter intercession or something. So I got a year's worth of service credit in my defined benefit, and then I just got some extra money. This is kind of like a 403B. So I just got a little extra money in my DVS, and it sits there. And when I retire, I can decide what to do with it. So yeah.
Can you explain how the unused sick leave contributes to your service credits?
Yes, I can.
And the time frame for that?
Yeah. And the what? The time frame?
Yeah, when
Okay.
it happens.
So we'll tag team on this one too, because this is another issue that myself, I do want to give a shout out to David Milroy, because there's a group of us, full and part-timers around the state, that really care passionately about part-time community college faculty and making sure that you're treated fairly and that we make sure that you're getting your accurate retirement. And David's done a yeoman's job in advocating for part-timers. So I really appreciate the work that he's done. And one of the issues that I've heard coming back over and over again at this part-time task force at CalSTRS is when community college part-timers go from district to district, you need to take your sick leave with you. So let's say you're in San Diego at Palomar, and then you get a job teaching in LA, or your husband or wife moves to LA and you move to LA. If you leave San Diego, it's a good idea for you to tell San Diego, hey, I want to take my sick leave with me to LACCD or wherever else you're going. I know some of you just hang out in the same areas your whole life, so you don't need to worry about that until you're ready to retire, and you can talk about that. But just make sure if you're moving around districts that you take your sick leave with you. And then how sick leave works is, let's say, I know in my district, a C basis faculty member, it's 175 days a year. I don't know what it is for you guys. Something like that? 175-ish E. So if you have 175 sick days, CalSTRS will give you a whole year's worth of service credit. That's like a gold bar right there. So I'm not saying if you're sick, you should stay home and not get people sick. 175 sick days when you were ready to retire, that would have, so if you had 24 years of service credit, right? And then you retire and you had 175 sick days, you'd get 25 years of sick leave. Does that make sense?
So we have hours.
Service credit, sorry. Service credit.
We have hours, not
So you can talk to that.
And we convert that to days by dividing it by 6.
Oh, 6.
6 hours in a day.
That's a little controversial.
That's what, it is
That-
controversial, but that's what the law
It's
says.
controversial because it's not, yeah.
Yeah, but that's what the law says. In terms of the mechanics of how that, of how it gets reported, when you submit your retirement application to us, and here's another ad, when you're ready to retire, don't just tell your employer that you're retiring. All you're doing from them is quitting or resigning or however you want to call it. You are not retiring until you fill out a retirement application and send it to us. Don't give it to your employer, send it to us. You can go online and do it online, and we strongly encourage that because it will be accurate, it'll be processed quickly, it saves everybody a lot of hassle. But either way. So one of the components of the application for retirement is what's called the Express Benefit Report. And that's a report that we send to your employer, and your employer identifies a number of things, including how many days or hours of sick leave. Actually, they have to tell us how many days of sick leave you had when you left. And we use the sick leave of all the employers that you worked for in your last year. So if you had 3 different employers in your last year, we will get that figure from 3 different employers. If for some reason you left one of the employers before your last year, that doesn't count towards service credit, which is why it's important that you transfer that to a district you are working for. And they have to take it, by the way. The law requires that they take it. And so we'll convert that to service credit. Now, because many people retire the day after they stop working, it may take a few months for the employer to get back to us, and we will retroactively adjust your benefit to reflect that, but it will ultimately get reflected in your benefit.
Let me grab her and then back to him and then you. Go ahead.
Back in the early 90s, I transferred my sick hours, and I'm telling you, it was almost 18 months of work.
Yeah.
And where they said they couldn't do it, and then they'd say they were trying to do it, and then they'd sit on it, and it was like fighting tooth and nail. And now I'm working for one college district that says we don't have sick hours. If we're sick, we just don't get paid to go to work. Is that a real
What district
thing?
is that?
Mount San Jacinto.
No, I get sick leave.
I'm right there and I get sick leave.
You get sick leave.
I thought the law requires you to have sick leave, that's
It's
out of
just a
my.
community,
Yeah, this isn't a non.
state classes and stuff like that.
Okay, like
Yeah.
non-credit or something?
Yeah, non-credit. And so when we're sick, we just don't get paid.
Oh, okay.
Is
I
that true?
That would be outside. I mean, we don't have anything to do with
Okay, and-
It's another thing you should talk to either your union leadership or to your HR
And,
people. That's new to me. I haven't heard that before.
And because the one experience I had in the 90s, with it being so hard to transfer the sick hours to another community college, there's been a variety of places I've worked that I didn't even bother. Is there a time limit on those? Are those lost forever?
No, but it's a practical time limit, because if you go back, if you say, well, I worked for you 15 years ago, they may well not have any records of it. So I mean, there's a practical limit of doing it. So that's why it's really, I mean, you can try.
That's why I'm evangelizing, and I really want you to tell other people to do this. That's why it's so important to do it now, because districts will say, well, we don't know what kind of sick leave you had 15 years ago. We didn't keep records of that. So that's why I think I want people to get on that earlier. And I know it sounds like it was really tough for you, but it's worth the fight to make sure you get it. Did you want to interject on that, David? And that's okay. I'm just going to let David jump in.
Yeah, quick, I just want to testify on that, Dave Milroy, and I've been teaching about 20 years, and by finishing up at Grossmont College, my retirement college, and I went into the HR office and said, this whole sick leave hours I want transferred. She was, sure, no problem. Southwestern, Maricosta, Mesa, okay, I'll send the request, thank you, bye-bye. That's how hard it was. And all Southwestern sent up all the hours, Mesa sent all the hours, Maricosta sent all the hours, and my Grossmont sick hours, leave hours, just grew and grew and grew, and it's all there, so when I retire, it's all in one place.
So you consolidated them
It's all
into
Grossmont.
your main college.
Yeah, the place you know you're going to be when you retire.
Which he knows where he's going to, I will say that not every part-timer knows where they're going to end up retiring, so that's one of the challenges. But in your case, yeah, that makes sense.
Nobody else can take you.
Nobody else will think of anything. That's such a rabble-rouser. Yeah.
The shortest drive.
So basically, I have 80 sick hours, that's 13 days divided by 6.
Okay.
Right.
But I have to have 175 to make one service credit?
Well, it depends on the particular contract requirements of your district in your last year. 175 is what it
That's
is.
what it is for me in
Is what
LA,
applies.
so it depends on your district and your
Could
contract.
be 220, I mean, it could be any number. I mean, you'd have to know what's the
That
number of
that
contract
would be
is.
a goal that I have to figure out what that number is.
It should be in the contract,
It should
to
be
be
your
honest with you.
contract,
Yeah.
and again, ask your union leader.
We don't really get contracts.
Well, no, I mean, but even for the full time, it's whatever it is for faculty, not necessarily the adjunct faculty, whatever it is for faculty.
Let me grab you and then you.
And then you have to hit the 1 year before it's applied? Or
No.
No.
You get fractions, yeah, I mean, if you earn 10 days of sick leave when you retire, you get a little
Oh,
tiny
yeah.
bit of that, yeah.
Oh,
So
you'll
it's a
get
fractional.
whatever.
I was just using a year as an example, because it's easy, 175 equals 1 year, but yeah, it can be 10 days, 20 days, however much you have will convert to a tiny bit of service credit. And trust me, lately I've been going through my whole employment history, grabbing all the service credit I can from everywhere I can, because every little bit helps. So I thought there was one other, you and then back there.
So how do you find out how many sick leave days you have, or sick, where do you find that?
Yeah, but your HR people.
Yeah, and typically for us in LA, it's on our paycheck. So is it on your paycheck? Look in the right-hand corner for us, it says how many illness days you have. So definitely track that, now that you know how important it is for your retirement.
Some of them say days and some of them say hours.
I know, this is like, so remember the hours? What's the rule of hours? 506, yeah.
And I will say, just as an adjunct, it gets very confusing. Our summer hours are different than our regular semester hours, and this summer, I did call in, I hardly ever call in sick, but I did call in sick. And later on, when I got my paycheck, again, it's the difference between the summer paycheck and the fall paycheck. Come to find out, instead of taking one night off, which is like 2.6 hours, they took a whole day. I mean, I was missing like 70 some hours for calling in sick for one class. And I think they just assume sometimes in HR, when you're calling in sick that one day, that it's a whole day. And so you find that the bookkeeping, being an adjunct, the difference between your summer paycheck stubs and your regular paycheck stubs and all the different colleges, it gets to be, I almost need an assistant to help me do my bookkeeping.
Yes.
You mentioned the contract, I assume that there's a slightly different contract with each district? Would that be something
Yeah,
we
there
could
is, because
find?
every district negotiates their own contract.
Would that be something that we could find on the STRS website, or would we have to go to HR?
You'd have to go, you'd have to look at you'd have to go to HR.
Thank
And
you.
if you're sick, so it'd be your sick days at District A and their contract days, plus your sick leave at District B and their contract days. That'll determine your service credit.
So that's where you want to retire. Higher.
Yeah.
Since we're talking about service credit, for those of us that have accumulated service credit in both STRS and PERS, I've been told, yes, you can combine them, and I've been told, no, you can't combine them.
You can combine them, you can combine them for purposes of vesting. So if you had 3 years with CalPERS and 2 years with us, you are vested.
Yeah.
But the calculation of your benefit is going to be based on our 2 years, our benefit is based on the 2 years you have under us, and under CalPERS, the benefit you have from CalPERS is going to be based on the 3 years you have with them. If, however, you didn't work those jobs simultaneously, we will use, both us and CalPERS will use your highest compensation to determine the benefit from each one of us. So if you were working in a low-paying job under CalPERS, and then you end up getting a higher-paying job with CalSTRS, your CalPERS benefit would be based on your CalSTRS compensation. And vice
But in
versa.
general, like we have faculty at my campus, when they were classified, so they were in CalPERS, and once they became faculty certificated, they stayed in CalPERS. And in general, that's what I've seen people do, is you stay in the system that you
Yeah,
started
but
in.
you couldn't, but you may not have made that election. You know, make that election to do that. If you didn't make that election, you would be in both systems, and it's what's called concurrent retirement.
Okay, this is just an aside, but I had heard at one point that the sick leave benefit could be, you could cash out at the end of, is that?
That's another myth, no, that's not something.
That's-
Yeah, I would love to do that.
Well,
That'd be awesome.
that's really up to the district to
Yeah.
decide that, but if you do, you don't get any service credit.
You don't get
Yeah.
the service, but you get the cash
That's up to your district whether you can do that or
And
not.
so we'd have to find out from the district.
Yes.
Again, yeah, but a lot of districts have phased that out, and I personally, I'm not a financial advisor.
And
but
Palomar
I
does
would
not do that.
What's that?
Palomar does not do that.
Yeah.
You lose
Yes.
it.
You lose it, say in 5 years to vest, is that 5 actual years?
5 years of service
5
credit.
years of service credit.
5 years.
So you've worked half-time for 10 years, that's,
Got it.
yeah, 5 years of service credit. Yeah. All right.
Should we go to the next slide?
Go to the next slide.
Just ready over here till Thursday.
Well, we can just finish up, but seriously, this is great. This is how I like to do. It's great when we just kind of actually address questions instead of just tell you a bunch of stuff. But we'll kind of give you a little bit. We'll give you a few of our slides here. Do you want to talk about the funding?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is really more for the more applicable to the people in DB because that's what has changed in terms of funding. As I'm sure it's probably many of you may have read about in 2008 there was a market meltdown, and as a result of that, we lost money. We lost 25% of our asset value. The average person lost 40% of their stock market value. Your 403Bs undoubtedly took a big hit.
I didn't open my Vanguard for like
Yeah.
years.
I mean,
Don't look at it.
So, and so what happened in our case, which is true with every other public pension system, is that the assets they had available to pay off the liabilities was dropping below a level where last year we only had 67% of the money we needed to be able to pay the benefits going forward, which in and of itself was a problem. It was continuing to go down, and we would have literally run out of money in 35 years. Now, the beauty of a DB program, unlike a 401k, apart from the fact is that the benefit is guaranteed. So even though we would have lost a lot of money and gotten down to zero, you still would have gotten benefit. The state would have just had to kick in a ton of money, and it would have been enormously expensive for the state to pay that benefit. But they would have paid it, and we would have enforced that requirement. But what's really important from a well-structured pension is that you pay contributions while you are working so we can invest, because most of the money we get is from our investments. Almost 60% of the money we have is from our investments. So to the extent that we can get money in early, we can invest it, and that reduces that long-term cost. So we've been working with the legislature literally for the last 10 years trying to get this fixed. The reason why it was an issue for us, unlike CalPERS, is that in CalPERS and most other public pension systems, the board sets the contribution rate that the employer pays. At CalSTRS didn't have that authority. It required a statutory change passed by the legislature, approved by the governor, for the contribution rates to change. As a result of that, what the members have been paying hadn't changed since 1972. What the employer has been paying hasn't changed since 1986. So it was sort of time for that to change because we had to do something to get this thing fixed. So finally, the legislature and the governor, they all came around, and last June, they passed a bill, AB 1469, that will fully fund the DB program over the next 32 years. And they do that by increasing the member contributions, by increasing the employer contributions, and the state's contribution. And the state is making a sizable contribution towards your pension, and they don't make any contribution. Oops, just lost power. They don't make any contribution. Yeah, and they don't. I'll speak loud. They don't make any contribution towards the retirement of CalPERS. So the fact that they're putting in a lot of money really makes a difference. So, and those contribution rate increases are being phased in over a period of time. So those of you who are CalPERS or CalSTRS DB members, you saw your contribution rate go up a little bit in July. It's going to go up again this July, and it'll go one more time in next July of 2016, and then that's it. That's as much as it's going up. So you can see these are what the rates are going to be, and it depends upon whether or not you became a DB member prior to 2013, or you were first hired prior to 2013 or afterwards. Most people probably are what we call 2% of 60 members.
Was anyone hired after 2013 in this room? Anyone?
Okay.
Oh, you were.
You were
Okay.
first hired,
Special.
well, not became a DB member, first hired in the community college or K-12? Okay. Got it? Okay.
So she's a.
So you are a 2% at 62 member. You have slightly lower benefits. You have to retire at an older age to get the same benefit that everybody else gets at a different age. But you will pay a slightly lower contribution rate. This shows you what those numbers are going to be. So we want to make sure that you're well aware of that. Now, in return for that, you also, so in return for that, we also, the legislation also guaranteed a portion of your benefit that wasn't guaranteed up until then. When you retire, your benefit will go up by 2% of your original benefit each year that you retire. Every October 1st, if you had $1,000 a month benefit, it will go up by $20 each month after that. But that was never guaranteed. The legislature said, you know what, here's what we're going to pay you, but we reserve the right to reduce or eliminate that benefit. And I will tell you, in other states where they were trying to deal with their pension problems, one of the first things to go was their cost of living adjustment. Not only did they not reduce it, they actually guarantee it now. So they actually gave you a better benefit than what you had before in return for the higher contributions that you're paying for that. So that was a good thing that came out of it. It was very different than what other states experienced. But the more significant thing is that the employer rates are going to be going up over the next 7 years. And these are what those numbers are going to be. They've been contributing 8.25% since 1986, and they started going up back in July, and they'll be going up by those amounts, up by those amounts in the next 7 years, and that'll be the total that they will be paying after 7 years. Wow. And then at that point, then the board has the authority to adjust the rate up a small amount or down as necessary to maintain full funding. So if we do better in our investments than we assume we will do, then the board can start reducing the employer's contribution rate below the level it otherwise would be. But it can't, and it can go up a little bit more, but not much more. And then the third piece.
Let me just comment on that really quick. The one comment I'd make is, has anyone in this room been on a negotiating team for a contract? Anyone? Anyone? A couple of you? So the big kind of takeaway that we took from LA, I think we had just negotiated a raise for us while this funding solution was happening, and we kind of got it in under the radar. But you can see that, with the district contributions increasing, the issue around collective bargaining is significant. So now districts can say, well, we can't afford to give you a raise, or we can't afford to give you A, B, and C because we're paying more in CalSTRS. So this is a challenge, and I think the districts had lots of reactions to this increase, but I just think from the collective bargaining standpoint, it is a challenge because districts are facing more cost. I mean, today's Governor Brown came out with a budget that's very favorable to community colleges, so I don't think districts can necessarily completely rely on that improvement, but it's a challenge.
Yeah, and in fact, in the governor's budget, he identified, he added $125 million for increased expenses, and he specifically identified retirement increases as one of those expenses. So it may not be enough to fully cover the expense next year, although the increase next year on a statewide basis isn't, I mean, it's $700 million, which when you think about the entire educational budget, isn't a large amount of money. So, so there is a little bit more money at least that the state is, or the governor's proposing to make available to offset that. The other thing, and one of the things that I think is important is there's a handout that we had which sort of summarizes all these numbers so you can take with you. But I want to draw your attention to the back of it, the last chart that we show on the back of the page. Oh, you don't have it?
We don't have any handout.
Oh, I guess now they're making their way down. Okay, well, let me go on and I'll get back to that after you've got the handout. So the other important thing is the state is also contributing money, so that's helping to manage how much the employers have to pay, and their contribution rates are going to go up to a level that's higher than what they've ever contributed to CalSTRS before. So it's worth about $20 billion over the next 32 years. So it's not small change, and it's making a big difference. Yeah.
Raise your hand if you didn't get a handout.
Yeah.
I heard, I'm just trying to verify this, on purchasing service credit. If you are eligible to purchase service credit and you decide to purchase a service credit from an individual retirement account, that you don't pay any taxes on that.
Correct.
It's a tax-free transfer.
If it comes directly from the IRA to, or from the, not an IRA, but from a 403B or a 401K or another. An IRA is not considered a qualified plan, but from a 403B or a 457 or a 401K, you can have it come directly from that company to us, and you just pay tax.
What about from an IRA?
I don't think an IRA qualifies as a as a qualified plan. I don't believe that's the case, but I wouldn't swear to it, but I don't believe.
Well, someone from your staff,
Okay, that's a problem. I don't know. I didn't think so, but I would defer to what they told you.
Just a comment, you guys, if you didn't get a handout tonight, I apologize that we didn't have enough. We'll make sure that we send David a PDF version of that, and we'll send that out.
And there is and it is available on our website also. But the one thing I wanted to point out to you was on the back of the page, for those of you who have it, there's a chart that shows the contribution rates and compares what the employer is paying towards retirement of CalSTRS members versus CalPERS members. And there's a couple of things. One is that you can see what the rates are going to be over the next 7 years from CalPERS, what they're doing to CalPERS, and then, as Sharon mentioned, CalPERS employees, CalPERS covered members are covered by Social Security, so the employer is paying another 6.2 on top of that. So you can see that how the total amount that the college is paying towards retirement of CalPERS members is substantially higher than what they're contributing for the CalSTRS members. So yes, the rates are clearly going up, but they're going up with CalPERS, they're going up with everybody else as well.
CalPERS just kept raising their rates, their board just raises it all the time, whereas CalSTRS, we haven't done it for 40 years on teachers. So they're really different systems. If you read the paper, you can kind of tell that we're really different systems, CalSTRS and CalPERS. But CalPERS changes the rates all the time. CalSTRS, we haven't been changing the rates.
We change it once every 2 decades.
Every 2 decades. Finish up?
Yeah, the last thing is, and I don't think this really matters, because Maricopa is the only cash balance district, I believe, in the county, and they were contributing 4 and 4. They were contributing 4, and the employers contributing 4. The law was changed a couple of years ago to require that every employee contribute at least 4%. They could negotiate a higher employee contribution rate, but the employee's got to contribute at least as much as what the employer is contributing. But that's what's been in Maricopa, so that doesn't really change. So that was our slides. Now we got questions.
Yes.
So you work for CalSTRS?
Yes.
And can we get your information? I mean, where are you?
You're gonna get all these emails.
I'm going home.
I think that, yeah, if you want more information, I think the best way of approaching it is, and I would tell all of you to do this, at some point you should actually, whoa, all right, the dance party's over, apparently. I would encourage you to talk to a counselor and have them talk through. So in San Diego,
There's a counseling office in San Diego. I mean, it's in the county office. It's not one of our staff in our office. We are going to be doing that over the next couple of years. That they will be our staff. We train them, but they're in the county office. And if you look at our member handbook, we can give you the address and the phone number. We do conduct workshops that those counselors in San Diego conduct. We strongly encourage you to go to one of those workshops, and they'll give you a general overview of the benefit structure and answer a lot of your questions. If after that you still have more questions about your own personal situation, then make an appointment to see a counselor, and you're going to get a one-on-one thing. And I suggest that you try to avoid the retirement season, which is generally in the spring and early summer, because they're obviously devoted to trying to get people who are ready to retire.
but one thing you can do is, folks here in this room, if you can invite, so like union leaders, part-time community college faculty, you can invite CalSTRS to come and do a workshop on your campus, which I would do if I were you, or you can do group counseling sessions, which I know we're doing. They can do that in San Diego, right? So I just met with our counselors at City College, and there were 15 of them, and they are basically going to the Glendale Service Center, and they're having instead of the counselor telling 15 separate people the same information, they're doing a group counseling session. So I think that's a really good, so grab some friends here and go, hey, let's go together and kind of learn from each other. Because I like these kinds of things because you kind of learn from each other's questions, right? It's the same kind of thing in a group counseling session. And then I think in 2 years, are we having San Diego? So in 2 years, we are going to build a member center here in San Diego. So we built one in Glendale, which is 5 minutes from my house in Eagle Rock, which I love.
Just a coincidence.
Just a coincidence. And then we're building these service centers around the state so that you really can have a place where you can go and make sure all your questions are answered.
But we can do San Diego now.
You
Yes.
can. We're working on just tightening some things up.
Right.
So, any last questions? Yes.
Where to get a beneficiary change form?
You can do it online. You can do that online. If you go on CalSTRS.com and go to My CalSTRS, you can actually change your beneficiary online now. And again, that's your homework assignment, right? Everyone needs to have a beneficiary for your one-time death benefit. You don't like to think about it. Do you have the same question, or do you have a question too? Well, there you go. Is he your beneficiary? I should have asked that. That's too personal. Sorry.
I'll be your beneficiary.
Yes.